In this video, I'll go over the key specs of the Norton Commando 961 SP, share a brief history of the bike, and give you my first impressions of it. I'll also outline our plans for the bike while it's with us. This is actually the first time I've ridden this bike, and I really like it a lot, and think it's just right in so many ways. Yeah, it's a new bike, but it's built to have integrity to its pedigree, and uses some up-to-date parts here and there like brakes and suspension, so you can really push it hard. As usual, there'll be some areas that I need to dial in and set up, but this is a first impressions video and it's just me jumping on the bike and riding it as it was delivered. While we have this bike, we'll also be filming the suspension setup to show you how we do that on press bikes to get the best out of them. An American company called Slacker has sent us a tool that we'll be using to measure the suspension sag on the bike ourselves without an assistant. If you've done this before, you know how much of a hassle it can be to have your assistant's presence in the workshop. In my case, it's my wife, and once she's there, she can't leave quick enough, which makes accurate measurements nigh on impossible. So I'll be filming the process so you can see how I set up the suspension on the Norton. I'm not a factory technician, but I know how all the settings work, and I can usually get a bike feeling much better for me than standard. Also, Insta360 has sent us one of their brand new X4 cameras, which we'll be producing a separate video on and using a lot of this Norton footage for, so hopefully I can show you some impressive shots I've taken with it in this Commando series of videos. A typical loan for a press bike from a manufacturer is around 2 weeks. Sometimes we have them for longer, but it depends on how their insurance works and what bookings the bikes have after that. So we've got this one for 2 weeks. Brian on the channel has already tested this bike and taken it to the Great Mallee Mountain Rally. This was her first proper trip away and she had an amazing experience, although the trip was not without issue. If you're interested to see Brian's opinion on the bike, you can check it out on our channel. The video is called Norton Commando 961 SP Review After a 1500 Mile Mountain Rally. Before we move on to the specs of the bike, here's a little history on the 961. The Norton Commando 961 is a modern take on the classic Norton Commando originally produced from 1967 to 1977. Kenny Dreer, a Norton enthusiast and restorer, initiated the 961 project early in the 2000s. His aim was to create a modern version that retained the classic Commando look and feel, developing prototypes under the name Norton 952 and later 961. In 2008, Stuart Garner acquired the Norton brand and pushed Dreer's project into production. Garner's 961 launched around 2010, though the brand struggled with production delays, quality, and financial issues. Limited service support and parts availability also frustrated owners. In 2020, an Indian company bought Norton. All Nortons are now manufactured here in the UK at Norton's headquarters in Solihull, West Midlands. The new re-released Norton Commando 961 is similar to Dreer's, but has improved reliability and build quality. Under TVS ownership, it now benefits from enhanced quality control, updated materials, and enhanced refinements for durability. Right, onto the specs. The current Norton Commando 961 comes in two models. The SP, which is the Sport, and the CR, which is the Cafe Racer. Standard colours for the bike are Matrix Black or Manx Platinum, but there is also some special edition colours available too. The primary distinction between the SP and the CR models lies in their handlebar configurations. The SP has slightly higher bars for longer rides and more comfort, while the CR's bars are lower for a faster riding position. When I requested the bike, I asked for the SP version because I prefer a relaxed riding position. The engine on the bike is a 961cc air and oil cooled parallel twin. It produces 77 brake horsepower at 7,250 RPM and 81 Newton meters of torque at 6,300 RPM. The engine uses a pushrod design. Unlike overhead cams, the pushrod system places the camshaft lower using rods to open the valves. Pushrods allow for a more compact engine design and have strong low-end torque, simpler construction, and fewer moving parts. Harley-Davidson, Indian, and Moto Guzzi still use pushrod engines in their bikes today as well. The engine also has a 270-degree crankshaft. Manufacturers use 270-degree cranks for their unique exhaust note, smoother power delivery, and reduced vibrations, creating a more engaging and comfortable ride in a parallel twin. This engine does have a counterbalancer to try and manage some of its vibrations. Exhaust is a full stainless system. It's got no rider modes or other technology like that, aside from ABS. Transmission is 5-speed and the clutch is a hydraulically operated wet multiplate design. Steel frame of the bike is hand welded. Some nice additional touches to the chassis include billet machine yokes made from aerospace grade aluminium and carbon fiber front mudguard and chain guide. Forks and shock are Öhlins. Diameter of the front forks is 43mm. Both front and rear shocks have preload compression and rebound damping. Wheels are both 17-inch and tyres are Dunlop Sport Max GPR 300s. Front and rear brakes are Brembo. Front brake calipers are 4-piston and the discs are 320mm. Rear brake caliper is a 2-piston and the disc is 240mm. Curb weight of the bike is 230 kilograms. Seat height is 810mm. Fuel tank is 15 litres. Oil is stored in the frame and topped up here. The bike has a 6,000 mile service interval. Price of the 961 Sport is $16,999 and the Cafe Racer is $17,499. Alright, first impressions now. If you've watched any of my other videos, you'll know I like to ride the bikes as they're delivered to me, so I can see how they feel without any setup. Then, over the period that I have the bike, I like to take them back to what I know is the standard settings according to the manual, and then build on my setup, changes, and personalization from there. The very first thing I noticed about the bike when it was wheeled off the van was how gorgeous that matrix black color is and how good the bike looks just standing still. I've seen the bike loads, but every time it just looks so good from so many angles. This first impressions ride is split into two parts. Part 1 is my 45-minute ride when I got the bike very late one afternoon and I just could not wait to get out for a ride, so I went. And part 2 is a few days later, but I class them both as my first impressions because nothing's dialed in yet. All up, I reckon total ride time for this first impressions video is a few hours, which I think's enough. When you start the engine on the bike, it really smells great and it has a very distinctive sound. Also, the uneven beat of the 270-degree crank is there and it draws you in and makes you want to listen to it from different angles. These 961s do have their own character and they really do light up the comment sections of our social media accounts when we put videos up of them. Okay, so you already know that I like the bike, and this bike has everything I love about riding classic bikes on the road. It's not fast, but it gives you the sensation of riding fast, and it needs to be ridden respectfully, and all your actions need to be controlled and considered to get the most out of it. But this is also where the fun with this bike is. The pipe looks like it should be louder than it actually is because from the back, there looks to be not much area for packing. It looks quite low slung under there and it's loud, but it's not overly loud. I forgot my earplugs on both part 1 and part 2 of this first impressions video, and my ears weren't ringing at the end of the video of either ride, so that's how I gauge it. The foot peg placement is actually quite wide on the bike, and the gear lever and the brake pedal are also quite far out. I like to ride with the balls of my feet on the foot pegs and firmly tucked in. The gear shift lever was fine to use, but when I was using the rear brake, I was braking with the body of the lever, not the tip of the lever, because it was positioned so far out. I did have a quick look at the adjustment when I got back, and it wasn't actually immediately clear that its position could be changed. The engine doesn't like to be ridden down low in the rev range and does like to be ridden in the right gear. As I've mentioned, it does have a counterbalancer, but there is a fair amount of vibration there. If you ride classics, you'll be fine with it. If you've never ridden a classic bike, you'll be surprised by it. Clutch is light and gear shifting is very positive and not at all clunky. I haven't missed a gear yet, and I didn't run out of gears on the B roads during my first blast, but I'm looking forward to seeing how it does on the motorway. When I first sat on the bike, I felt the tank cutouts were in the wrong place, but now I've ridden the bike, I can say that it's lovely, and it really lets you grip the bike with your knees. Not much steering lock on this bike, but once you know about it, you just position the bike accordingly and deal with it if you need to. As mentioned, with this bike, we'll be doing a full video on the suspension, but straight off the van, I feel the Öhlins is great. It does have too little preload for my weight on the forks, and not enough compression damping because it's blowing through the travel. Also, the fork bottom's quickly on braking, so preload and compression definitely needs to be dialed in. Rear shocks also have too much sag on them and will also do well from having a proper setup. The overall chassis feels very balanced, nimble and quick turning right now without being set up for me, so that will only improve. Right now I think the chassis is one of the more outstanding features of the bike. I think it handles so well. The bike loves being muscled into turns and the front wheel just feels so stable and planted. The seat, controls, rider position, all comfortable. My typical preferred riding position is fairly upright, but this bike has me a little lower and tucked into the tank, gripping the bike with my knees, which seems to be fine for me for the first few hours. For reference, I'm 6'1" and 95 kilograms. Brakes feel very powerful, although I found myself having to use 2 fingers on the front brake lever, so hopefully some minor adjustments to the lever will fix this. By the time I'd finished my first ride, I was coming home in the dark. The headlight is good enough, and I'm glad they haven't gone for an LED here because I like how this one looks. Every time I put the stand down on the bike, I'm second guessing whether it's down or half down, and I'm always checking to see if it's ready to fall over. I'll be riding the bike in all different kinds of terrain to build a more balanced opinion of it. In the next video in this series, I'll walk you through my suspension setup process and how I dial it in. Then in the last video, I'll give you my full in-depth review of the bike after having lived with it for a while. That's it. Thanks for watching.